So, hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Business of Sports show. Today, I say it every time that it's going to be a special episode, but I'm looking forward to this. I've tried to get this man on the podcast a couple of times. The schedules haven't worked out, but this is a legend of the game. He's one of the hardest players around. And if you ever want to see it, Google Jamie Cudmore, Paul O'Connell. We won't put the clip in, but here's a ding dong. So, Jamie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, for all the people that don't necessarily know you, introduce yourself.
So my name is Jamie Cudmore. I'm a 43-year-old ex-professional rugby player. I'm now a coach. I'm based in the east coast of Canada right now in Newfoundland. So I'm Canadian originally, but I spent the majority of my time playing professionally in France. My first year professionally was actually in Wales with Llanelli back before they were Scarlets. Yeah. And the year after that, after the 03 World Cup in Australia, I moved to France, and that's where the majority of my career was as a player, and then as a coach, and then as a general manager. And in 2019, I moved back to Canada to restart our National Development Academy, and at the same time coach the forwards of our Canadian national team.
Excellent. So you said you went to Llanelli. Big Scarlets fan myself. How did you end up over there?
So it was kind of a few different connections through teammates at the time, and they were looking for kind of young players that had a bit of a certain skill set, and I guess I fit the bill at that time. I got an opportunity to come over kind of on a junior contract and be a part of the Llanelli group. And then the great thing for me is that as I was a youngster coming through, I was only kind of 22 years old at the time. I had the ability to play every weekend. So if I wasn't in the top squad for the week, I would move up west, and I played for a team called Llandovery in the west country, and really enjoyed that. It was quite funny. It was the first training. Everybody was speaking Welsh, and I couldn't understand anything. So they were just trying to pulling over the Canadian guy, but no, it was really good. I've still got some great friends from those two squads, and really thoroughly enjoyed myself. And I was able to play every weekend, either a little bit with the Scarlets or mostly with the Drovers. And I learned a hell of a lot, and really enjoyed my time in Wales.
And then you went to France. Come on, explain that move.
Well, I didn't directly go to Clermont after the 03 World Cup. Yeah, I went to Grenoble, and Grenoble is quite a storied club. There's back in the kind of 80s and 90s, they had the kind of the monster with 16 feet. They used to call it. They had this massive pack with Jacques Fourou, who was kind of a legendary number 9 at the time. He played for France, played for Grenoble, and he was just this little guy. So it's basically like these monster pack and this little guy, little general that kind of ran everybody around. And so I'd done a bit of research, and I was showing up there, and they similarly had that type of team at the time. Big, heavy forward pack with a 9 and 10 that kind of pulled the strings, and really enjoyed that. But to be honest, I was absolutely lost, because this was kind of early 2000s. There wasn't much in the way of, there was no smartphones, or, you couldn't figure out exactly where you were. So I'm like researching through like dial-up internet and try to figure out where I'm actually going. I didn't speak much French, even though, we understand quite a bit of French growing up in Canada. But in terms of like stringing, sentences together, I was far from it. The first kind of year was quite difficult, but I'm very happy that I stayed and learned the language, and then eventually, my family and I, we all became French.
And then you went to Clermont and had a hell of a run there.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed myself in Clermont. It was at the time where I originally signed 2 years in Grenoble, and in the second year, things went a little bit sideways. Basically, there was the president was kind of pulling money from different places and paying guys under the table, and all the rest of it wasn't really above board, and the club had a period of instability. I was very fortunate to be named captain that year, but it was a complicated situation because I didn't have a full grasp of the language. I had the respect of kind of both sides in the team. We kind of had a foreigners group and a French group. And myself and a few others, we kind of navigated between the two of them. But it was a complicated situation. Dean Richards was our head coach at the time. Got a lot of respect for Dean, and he brought a certain edge to the team. But I think there was some underlying issues from the year before that neither he nor I nor our best intentions could kind of get rid of. So it kind of blew up there, and I didn't feel very stable there. I was enjoying the professional rugby thing, and I was actually talking with Lester, and I had a good chat with Richard Cockrell at the time, who had played in Clermont, because I was talking with Lester and Clermont. And I said, listen, Richard, I'll be honest with you here. I'm really enjoying France. I haven't really got I haven't really, mastered the language. I'm really enjoying the kind of lifestyle and everything. I said, what would you do? And me kind of thinking, as he was a Leicester coach, he'd try to get me over to Leicester. He goes, honestly, Jamie, if I were you, I'd go to Clermont, because I enjoyed my time there. They've got a great public, great area where they live and die rugby, and that kind of helped me make my decision. And at the same time, I've been to Leicester a few times, and it wasn't that nice. So nothing against all the people up there, but the center of France in a beautiful green area with volcanoes everywhere. It was looked like a pretty good spot. And then, I was very fortunate the following year, the year after I arrived, Vern Cotter arrived and completely turned the club around. And I spent 11 great years in Clermont.
Yeah, and what a ride. So let's kind of dial it back a bit. How did you actually get into rugby then? Because when I think of Canada and certainly the way that you play, I think, ice hockey enforcer, definitely.
Yeah, well, I wasn't allowed to play hockey when I was a kid. I grew up in a small town on the West Coast called Squamish, and we were kind of, a little bit far out of town. So when the city boys would come up and play hockey, it was normally, the visiting team would get, escorted out by the police because things got pretty heated. So my mom said, well, there's no way you're playing hockey. It's too violent, this, that, and the other. So my parents emigrated from England back in the mid 70s. And my dad had played rugby, and he always wanted his boys to play rugby, but there was just no opportunity in a small town where really you'd have, volleyball and basketball in the winter and then baseball or soccer in the summer. But we're very close to Whistler, so skiing was a big thing in my family. My dad loved skiing, and I did skiing from 2 years old, and just kind of went through the ranks and had a pretty good career skiing wise. But when I was working in the summers, logging, my boss at the time, he was the president of the local rugby club. They had kind of started a little third division club in town, and they were playing back and forth with the teams in Vancouver. It's only about an hour away, so that's how rugby started. He said, "Listen, you guys want to, not work on Saturdays? You come play rugby." We said, me and my buddy Dave, who we were working on the hill together, we said, "Yeah, let's give it a go." And that's kind of how it all started. Kind of took off from there.
Well, yeah, certainly sent you on a very different path. So, do you ever kind of, regret kind of doing the rugby thing rather than anything else, ice hockey or?
No, I don't. I'm very fortunate as I don't have any regrets in my life. I've kind of gone into all the different situations, looking at the pros and cons, and I made a decision. And sure, would it be nice to have played hockey for the same amount of time I did professionally and make a few $1,000,000 every year? Like, sure, but like, who knows if that would have happened? There's a lot more people trying to play in the NHL than there are Canadians trying to play in Europe. So I'm definitely happy with how it all worked out. Playing some rugby in Squamish, moving down to Vancouver, playing some rugby there, and then moving down to New Zealand as an 18-year-old and playing club rugby down there. And just kind of every time there was an opportunity that came up, I basically if it sounded like fun, I took it, and that's how it kind of just step by step all of a sudden I ended up in professional rugby.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is taking every opportunity that comes to you. So let's talk about your time at Clermont then, because it was a hell of a club to kind of be at. And let's face it, you were involved in some pretty decent rugby over the years over there. Yeah. I mean, what were your biggest takeaways, or what were the games that actually really stand out for you?
I think some of the bigger games for me are those hard away wins, which at the beginning of my career in France were pretty few and far between. It was kind of the status quo was you do really well at home, but when you go away, it's like doesn't really matter if you're going to lose. Like, the guys, they give it a go, and if they can get their backs up, they'll go for a win. But it wasn't really, the mentality really, I didn't really understand it. Coming from like a kind of maybe an Anglo-Saxon or definitely North American mindset, where I'm trying to win everything. I want to win every tackle, I want to win every scrum, I want to win all of it. That maybe wasn't always the case, but definitely, as I said earlier, when Vern arrived in Clermont, he created a kind of a work ethic across the board that a lot of guys, couldn't handle. So those guys kind of fell away. And the guys, we had a really good core group of, in our pack. We had some good leaders in our backs, with Aurelian, Pierre Mignoni, Tony Marsh. There's some really good backs who, had a lot about them. And with that kind of like that core group, and Vern's kind of no nonsense leadership, that created a really good strong work ethic in the group, guys really playing for each other, and kind of losing this whole we do really well at home and we're not too worried about away games, whereas the boys are like, no, we really want to go after everybody. And the first year he arrived, we won the Challenge Cup in 2007, and we were in the final of the French Top 14 the next 4 years. So it showed that we had the right group and we had the right leadership to kind of meld that all together and be very, very successful.
Do you think moving to France and the French game and the French league suited your game? Because people always say in interviews and things like that the French game is very, very physical, and it is brutal. I'm not surprised that Dean Richards was over there as a coach, and Richard Cockerell went over and things like that, because they often say that Leicester, with their kind of murder ball mentality, would have suited it. So do you think that kind of that's where it allowed you to really come into your own, is because the physicality over there was spot on for you?
Oh, definitely. It's kind of, rugby's quite a simple game if you look at it. If you have a good pack of forwards and you're constantly moving forward, well, you should be able to be victorious. So I always thought, if I do my best to dominate my opposite number, make sure that when I'm hitting rucks, when I'm carrying the ball, that we're trying to move forward at all times. The backs will figure out how much we win by. And that's that's been my kind of ethos since I learned rugby, playing third division in Squamish, where we had a big, mean pack of forwards. And whether it's pick and going, whether it's keeping it tight, or even whether it's playing a more an expansive game, and you're just making sure you're hitting rucks so the rucks are fast, so you can play at a high rate of speed. Those pieces are kind of the base of being successful in rugby. So definitely in France at that time, and it's still the case now. You look at the teams that are doing well internationally, they've got a good pack of forwards, they've got a great kicking game, and they've got players that are kind of interchangeable that can play fast, slow, medium. They play basically at their pace. And in France at that time, it was very much make sure that the forwards cleaned and go forward. You had a good dominant scrum, good maul, and then the backs would play when they wanted. And it was definitely very important to be successful. And it rings true with rugby, from the very beginning to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk us through some of the highlights then. So what happened with your little dust up with Mr. O'Connell?
Oh, with Paul. Yeah, it's funny how like things that I grew up and knew in Canada, and kind of like there were these kind of unwritten things that like from hockey. So normally what happens if boys drop the gloves in hockey, both you go for 5 minutes for fighting, right? And that's like the thing. Yeah. Like you get a penalty, you fought, you get 5 minutes, you go, and then both guys, it's kind of cancels each other out, right?
Yeah.
So in that game in 08, we had started quite well. We were in the game, and there was a bit of a line out thing, and it kind of a bit of a kerfuffle, and I think their hooker fell on our number 9. And one of the things that I learned, young playing in Canada is that, no other forwards touches your number 9. So I got worked up about that. And then, everybody's kind of jostling around, pushing, and Paul came over, pushing on me, and I'm pushing on him. And then he's kind of looking at the referee or the touch judge, I think, and kind of say like, oh, I gave him a bit of a jab or something. And we kind of going at it. And I said, well, if he's kind of trying to get me a card, well, I think we both need to get a card, and we'll both get 5 for fighting. Yeah. Even though in rugby, we're both going to probably get a yellow card.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my mindset around it. And I said, oh, we'll throw a couple of handbags and see what happens. And there was nothing really to it. We threw a couple and went to the ground. He threw a couple, and we got up and had a bit of a jaw at each other, but that was really it. And I ended up getting a red card. And I was like, wow, geez, I thought we pretty much did the same thing. But I guess anyway, I think it was Craig White at the time that was the referee. He made his decision, and you gotta live with that. But ever since, like Paul and I, we've had a good laugh about it after games, and he's come over to Clermont a few times. I shared a few bottles of wine with him, and there's nothing much to it.
No, but that's the nice thing about rugby, isn't it? Is that you have your ding dongs on the pitch, you try and knock 7 shades of shit out of each other for 80 minutes, and then as soon as the final whistle goes, right in the bar and let's have a beer together.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, you pretty much had that tag of the enforcer. The kind of brute around the pitch. What do you think of that?
That's how the media portrays things, right? The more kind of, even you've got good guys and bad guys and villains and all that stuff. It's almost like WWE, like
it's
entertainment. It's entertainment, but as I said earlier, rugby is quite a simple game. So for me in my position, I had to make sure that we were going forward and I was cleaning out effectively, making sure I can make my tackles. And if I could, add a little bit extra to those and make sure that, it helped us move forward, well, then I was going to do that. A lot of people may say certain things about, I'm a goon or this, that, and the other, but I'm not too worried about that. I had an amazing, 17-year career, and you don't play that long in the top 14 in France if you're doing a bad job. You know what I mean? So,
exactly. I know I'd rather be on your team rather than against you anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm too old for all that now.
You don't fancy a game on Saturday then?
Well, I might be playing in the Classics next month, so.
Nice. Is that in Bermuda or somewhere?
Well, I'm coaching it, but I'm struggling to find enough players, so I might have to lace the boots up and do an old Reggie Dunlop.
Brilliant. We'll have to have a look at that. So, I mean, there's always that moment as well from, was it the 2015 World Cup where you joined the French huddle? I mean, that was just absolutely classic. Did you actually pick up anything, or did they?
Well, I knew exactly what they were doing.
Fun?
I knew exactly what they were doing. So the thing is, I was at that time I was playing. My second row partner was Nathan Hines in Clermont, and he used to do that all the time. Well, the two of us did really. We kind of stumble through when they're having a bit of a huddle or come back late, or like he would do silly things like he'd get down and tie up his shoes and he'd unlace other people's shoes, just funny stuff, like. And anyway, I did that, and I got into the lineout or into their huddle, and I said, "Oh, Damien, qu'est-ce qu'on fait?" I said, like, "Damien, what are we going to do?" Because Damien Chuli and I, we were good friends, and we played at Clermont together. He actually lived like 200 meters down the hill from us in just south of Clermont. So we were like neighbors, like kids are jumping in the pool all the time, and he looks up at me and he goes, "Oh no, Jamie, like get out of here." And that's when Rabba pulled me out, and I just kind of walked away. But I knew exactly where they were going. They were going up at 4, and they were going to drive. But unfortunately, our lineup policy at that time was we weren't going to jump. So anyway.
So obviously, there's that kind of moment at Clermont as well where you got the head injury, got the concussion, came off, and then ended up back on the pitch. So, do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah. So in the Champions Cup in what was it, 2016, I think. No, 15, 16. Yeah, 16. And yeah, so semifinal against Saracens. In Saint Etienne. It was quite an event. 45,000 people. Geez, I think about 43 of them were from Clermont. It was a sea of yellow and blue, and really, really amazing event. And in that game, we kicked the box kick forward, and I went up and I went to like counter ruck, and I arrived at the same time as Billy Vonipola. So like, two big boys just going head to head. And we both kind of like were there, like on all fours, not kind of shaking the cobwebs off. But I had been split. So I got taken off by the physio for blood into the change room. The doctor realized that not only was I cut open, he said he didn't like how good I was. So he put me through the HIA. He deemed that my HIA was no good. So he said, "No, you're done. Sit down. Game's over." And I was really upset. I said, "No, I want to keep playing. I want to keep playing." Hold on. Is this killing you, the vacuum? Can you hear that?
No, that's all good, mate.
All right. So he said, "No, you're done. Go sit down." And I tried to argue with him. He said, "No, sit down. You're done," and he left. About 5 minutes later, the other doctor came in and he said, Jamie, are you okay? Seb Bahamina, your second row partner, he's no good. He's got to come off." And I said, "Oh yeah, sweet. I'm good." Because I started to recover and I was feeling a bit better. I'd only taken off one boot, so I just popped the boot back on and we went straight back out and finished the game. But after the game, I wasn't right. I was like really, really tired, like more than you would normally be, like fatigued mentally. I had like kind of cloud behind my eyes and really lethargic. We had just won and we're going in the final in 10 days or 2 weeks. And I'm just like, normally he'd be over the moon, right? and I just couldn't get up. I was really kind of lethargic and dead. And anyway, like sat in the bus, had like half a beer, didn't even want to finish a beer, like just get me home. So I went and saw a neurologist and everything on the Tuesday, and by that time it was not much better. So they said, "Oh, we'll push your return to play," because they had changed return to play to 6 days. And why is it 6 days? So you can keep playing, right? Yeah. It's not because of your health. It's so the clubs can have all their boys on the field. So anyway, I went through all that, did a graduated return to play, and the following Tuesday got the green light. But in retrospect, like, I wasn't right. I think the neurologist knew I wasn't right, but everybody was trying to push to get me the green light. I was trying to push to get the green light. The doc was trying to push to get the green light. So it's kind of a perfect scenario of like everybody trying to see the positive and the good sides so that I could play. Yeah. Even though objectively, I think it should have been somebody who wasn't connected to the club, you know, who didn't really care whether I was playing rugby the next weekend or not. Yeah. But anyway, I was deemed okay to play in the final. You know, in the first tackle I made, I had Chris Massoy and Zebri Chalky comes to the same gap. And I tackled Chris like low, properly, shoulder contact, you know, under the elbows, like perfect tackle. And bang, I'm finished on my ass. And I'm looking up, and all I can see is the lights of Twickenham above me. And I'm thinking, geez, what the hell just happened? That doesn't make any sense. Like normally with good tackle, I dominate it or at least complete the tackle. So anyway, they pull me off the field, and I go through another HIA. They deem that I'm okay. And I come back on and play into the second half, where I have a head-on-head collision with one of their back row players. I get split open, and I get kind of on the ground, kind of managed to get back up. Physio grabs me. He goes, "No, we got to take you off for blood." So I get taken off for blood, and in the change room, I'm getting stitched up, and I started to get nauseous and started throwing up in the garbage can there, and there was two players, or one of our players, our 24th player, Benson Stanley. He's there with our logistics guy, and they both said, like, Doc, he's throwing up. Like, I don't think this is a good idea. You let him back on. And I'm saying, like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like, you get that adrenaline pump from puking, right? And you want to go. And plus, we had just Nick Bennon had just scored, so it made the game close, and we were hopefully trying to be victorious, because I'd already been involved in the game in 2013 when we lost, so I didn't want that to happen again. So I wanted to do my part. So I go out, finish, I get back out, I finish the game, but then after that, like, man, that night I was a zombie. I was an absolute zombie. I couldn't sleep, even though I was very, very tired. And I had basically like post-concussion symptoms for at least 10 days. Didn't sleep for about 10 days. I was an absolute monster at home. Like, couldn't have my kids come near me because they were too loud. Couldn't deal with light. I still have trouble with noise, like high-pitched noise that comes from behind. Really, really struggle with that, and you know, I've got some memory issues and stuff. It's complicated, you know. It's, you know, you want to do the best for your team. You want to kind of be out there and help the team move forward, but at the same time, you got to keep care of your brain. And unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to make the right decision, and I think the people around me didn't make the right decision either. Well, it's too bad, because it's something that needs to be paid a lot more attention to, especially at the grassroots level. Like, you know, kids see the professional players playing every weekend, and if they see us going off and then coming back on, well, they're going to think they can do the same thing. Yeah, that's clearly not the case. You know, like, it needs to be a lot more stringent at the grassroots level and at the professional level, because we're leading the way for, you know, the kids that are watching us every weekend, right? So I think I'm happy that I see the return to play is longer now. That's a step in the right direction.
Have they changed it to 2 weeks now, 14 days?
I think I remember 13, but I think you're right, 14, and hopefully it's 14, if not 15, because then you're not pushing for that second game.
Yeah, because years ago it used to be 2 week mandatory thing anyway, didn't it? And then obviously, like you said, they shortened it to get players back on the pitch quicker.
Yeah. That's the only reason I can see why they would shorten it. Especially you look at other sports where you get knocked out, like MMA, boxing, like those guys take months off after that to make sure that they're actually cognitively recovered and they can come back and go back into the arena.
Yeah, so it seems absolutely bonkers that you can get mashed up on a Saturday, and then as long as you're okay in 6 days' time, you're back doing it again. When, like you said, other sports like that give you a lot more time to recover. And I mean, you've got to be disheartened by the comments that come out of World Rugby at the moment, given everything that's going on with head injuries, concussions, dementia and things like that. I mean, was it the CEO, Alan Gilpin, kind of playing down the situation at the moment and saying that, it's only a few players that are coming, not the hundreds that the media are saying.
There's over 100 guys in that lawsuit against World Rugby.
I mean, I can only see the number growing.
I understand why he would try to do that, because he's a businessman, and World Rugby at the end of the day it's business. So if you have something like that that's threatening your product, well, you're going to try to kind of push it away, or you're going to try to, I think they should address it head on and try to be proactive around it. If they are proactive around it, well, then the game is going to be much better set up for the future. You're never going to make rugby safe. It's a contact sport, but it's when those injuries happen, that's where the mindset needs to change. We can't keep pushing people through because, he's a tough kid. Wow. Most kids, I'd say everybody who plays rugby is a certain level of tough, but, everybody's only got one brain, and your brain doesn't care if it gets hit or your brain cares when it gets hit. So, you've got to, treat the injury as it is very, very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I kind of feel like they need to take it a bit of a leaf out of what happened with American football, and them actually addressing it. And not initially, but they've put things in place now for players after they've retired. And I've spoken to a number of players on this podcast and outside of this as well about the fact that there's not a lot of actual care for players once they finish. So, speaking to Reece Thomas, obviously had a heart attack, and going, there was nothing. So no kind of payout or look, we'll take care of you or anything like that. And you kind of go, we haven't fully seen an old professional rugby player yet. Somebody in their 70s that has actually played professional rugby, that has been beasted in the gym, been beasted on the training pitch, done all the contact work, had the head injuries. So we don't fully know what's around the corner. And I think kind of the burying their head in the sand over the head injuries and concussion and dementia and things like that is a very dangerous route to go, because, like you said, the head injuries are a part of the game. It's always going to happen when you've got two guys running at each other to tackle each other or just having that collision. It is going to happen, regardless of great technique or anything like that. Anything can happen at that moment. But it's what we do afterwards that because as a professional, your time is limited in the game. And yet you're going to spend more time out of the game than you do in it. with your family and life afterwards.
Yeah.
So putting that kind of risk out there and almost not having that backup from the unions or even some of the player organisations from what I've heard as well. I mean, that's got to be a bit of a scary and worrying thought, really.
Definitely. That was one of the reasons my wife and I started our foundation towards the end of my career. We started the Rugby Safety Network, and we've now rebranded it into the Rugby Support Network just for that exact reason. In that, after career, a lot of guys are kind of lost as to, you've gone from being in a professional environment where you have physios on call, doctors on call whenever you need, but then all of a sudden you're out of it and you've got a myriad of different issues, whether it be head, neck, shoulder, knee, ankle, whatever, just physically. And then not only mentally, a lot of people struggle with the after rugby. You're not a kind of a big shot professional anymore. You're the ex-professional, and a lot of guys struggle with that kind of. Where's their identity now? And that's something that we've been working on here in North America for some of our local guys, and helping them get connections with mental health professionals, physical health professionals, physios, chiropractors, acupuncturists, looking at different ways to help those guys physically and mentally with different techniques and different substances. And I think that's really important, especially in the UK, France, the Southern Hemisphere. There's a lot of guys coming through who, out the back end of professional rugby, they're pretty beat up, and they deserve a certain level of support.
Well, let's face it, you put your body on the line, and then that's it. And we'll send me a link to the organisation. We'll put it in the description and everything, so people can find it and support it. But I totally get that of the professional. You're up there, and then all of a sudden you retire.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I never played professional rugby, never even close to it. But when I got to the first team in one of my local teams, I was made to feel like the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh, yeah.
So queuing up for the physio one week, and there are second, third team players, Colts in front of me, and I'm queuing up happily, thinking, well, I'll just wait. And then being ushered in ahead of these guys because I was in the first team. As soon as I was out of the first team, it was like, who are you again? So, and again, seeing that from a professional point of view of going, you're the best thing since sliced bread. You are the star player, and as soon as you hang up your boots, there's a new kid on the block that's just picked them up, and yeah, I mean, not only the physical injuries, but I suppose it's what do you do after your career?
Yeah,
I mean, you moved into coaching. How did that kind of, how did you kind of find that transition from 1 minute taking the orders to the next minute giving the orders?
So it's a complicated process, and I was fortunate that I started coaching a long time ago with a lot of junior clubs, with mini rugby, and even back in Canada I was coaching high school rugby, and it's kind of goes with my philosophy of trying to just help the youngsters get a leg up and help guys build and progress and be successful at the end of the day. But it is a big transition, especially as I went from playing in the top 14 and then coaching at the Espoir level, and then doing a kind of a player coach role in the last year of my playing career, and then going full time into a top 14 forwards coaching role, which was a huge step up for me. It was either sink or swim. And I drowned most of the time, to be honest, but I had a really good backs coach, a guy named Mike Prendergast, he's in Munster now, who really helped me with kind of his pedagogy and his ideas, and we got along really well in terms of we saw rugby and how we wanted to play rugby was very, very similar. and we played off each other, I think, quite well, and we were relatively successful for a team that came up from the Pro D into the top 14. So it was good to have somebody that kind of to help, not only mentor but bounce ideas off and kind of and learn, because at the end of the day, you go from, like you say, there's that drop off, right? You go from being a player, and now I've got a drop off, but I haven't gone too far because I'm still in that professional environment, but I'm now a coach. So it's it's a big transition. You're now down at the bottom of the ladder, because now I got to work my way up the coaching ladder in terms of the experience, and then how you decrypt things, and how you communicate with your players, the connections with your players, and I think it's been a lot of fun. Like, I've enjoyed it immensely, and I've created some great relationships, and we've been successful in the majority of stuff that I've been involved in. But it's a whole new profession, and it takes time to get good at it. And like a player, you're never the finished product. You're always trying to get better. And I'm always talking with other coaches around the world and doing professional development and trying to look at, new techniques and new ways to think of things and different perspectives. But I'm definitely enjoying it very much.
So what's the end goal then? So, when will you be close to that finished product? What's the
well, the thought process coming back to Canada was to lead our national team, because unfortunately, I think through really bad management and lack of planning, we've really kind of we've tumbled down the world rankings, and things are pretty bleak here right now for the men's national team. There's some really good people at kind of our age grade levels that are trying to really push hard and rebuild and get things on the right track. We've had some good success, with my academy boys over the last couple of years. There's now a great head coach in a guy named Phil Mack, who's running it out there, and that being kind of the only World Rugby accredited academy in North America gives us a kind of a certain level of status, so that when those guys graduate out of there, I got a lot of guys that have gone into the Canadian Sevens team, into the national team, and a lot of guys that have gone into the MLR, into Major League Rugby down in the States and in Toronto. So it's really, really good that we have actual pathways into professional rugby in North America now. It's the league is growing. It's only been around 6 years now, but it's getting better every year, and I think the commissioner wants to grow that. So things are looking good for the future, but there's a lot of work to be done here in the present.
Yeah, I've always thought that kind of the States and Canada could almost be sleeping giants in terms of rugby, because let's face it, you've got hockey, you've got American football, so you've got the traits and the physicality and things like that. It kind of almost feels like that little bit of finesse in terms of the laws, the gameplay, things like that. But as soon as those click, then I think the whole structure could just absolutely blow up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's plenty of athletes in North America that they go in the certain sports pathways, but then they kind of get to their late teens and maybe have understood that they're maybe not going to go to the baseball, the hockey, the football, whatever. And we get a lot of crossover athletes coming into rugby a bit later, which is it's good and bad. We've got more and more kids that are playing rugby from a young age, which is great. And then they have that kind of that finesse that you spoke about. They understand the game already. And normally that's kind of how our teams are comprised in the States and here in Canada, where you have a few kids that have played rugby at quite a young age and they've got a bit about them. And then you got a few guys that are more kind of athletes who are either very fast, very big, and can do certain things very well, but maybe struggle with the kind of maybe the catch pass or the game understanding. That's where it comes down to us as coaches to kind of to up that level across the country. So that's actually one of my roles here in the East Coast. Is I go around the provinces and have little coaching coaches seminars where we talk about pieces of the game that they want to improve on, and just try to disseminate information around the different grassroots programs and basically just raise the level of the game here in Canada.
So it sounds like it's really exciting times then over there in terms of
It is, especially with the World Cup coming in 31 here in the States. So that's going to be a massive for the game. So it's important that we capitalize on that, yesterday and start building things to be in place so that when hopefully we get that kind of that groundswell as most countries do after hosting a World Cup, we can really capitalize on that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the World Cup, Canada aren't in the next one, are they?
No, that's
I'm not going to go into it.
First time we've never been in a World Cup. It's a very, very sad, dark time. As I said, there's been some mismanagement over the last kind of 10, 15 years, and it's really disappointing because as I said, there's some good people doing some great things. Just haven't been able to kind of keep a cohesive, plan and unit together to push on and qualify for the World Cup.
True, but like you said, there's a platform building that, when the World Cup rolls into America, I mean, that'll be a hell of a showcase over there. And I think, Canada and the US will probably both do a bit of a France at the moment where they're really focusing on the national team because they want to have a good World Cup on home soil. Do you think France will pip it this time around?
It's hard to say, but I would definitely give a punt on France at home. The French are always very strong at home, and especially when they got a good fire under their ass, they can beat anybody. So you look at the pack they have right now. You look at the backs, they've kind of got 25 guys that are pretty much interchangeable, and then you got two packs where you got a majority of guys that are kind of 120, 125 kilos at start, and then they got about a bunch of 130 kilo guys that come on, midway through the second half. That's hard work,
Yeah.
Trying to deal with that type of density, and they've got skill as well. So it's they're definitely gonna be one to watch at home for sure.
Definitely. So before we wrap up, who were the top 3 toughest opponents you ever faced? To put you on the spot.
Put me on the spot. There's some tough kids out there. You might actually laugh at this one because one of the toughest ones that I ever played with is he's number 9, little fella, Morgan Parra.
Yeah.
He's only about $150. Like he's tiny. But geez, he plays like a 4th back rower, and he goes flying into rucks. He'll try to tackle anybody. He doesn't always successful, but man, does not care. Like you talk about guys after a career who are going to have some body issues. Geez, he's gonna need a full-time physio. But Morgan definitely just like an amazing competitor and tough as nails, and didn't like to lose anything. Like doesn't want to lose a tackle, doesn't want to lose a ruck, like nothing.
Yeah. So that does come across. Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it. Another guy was a guy who I actually played with against at the beginning of my career, and we had some good battles, and then played with one of my best friends, Thibaut Privat, who I think he's one of the longest serving second rows in French professional rugby. I think he played like 19, 20 years professional rugby in what was the top 16 before the top 14. And then the top 14, and a legend of a man, just like did the good thing, did his kind of core roles very, very well. And man, when he cut people down, he'd be like a coffin coming about a meter off the ground, just cutting people down. He was a real beauty. And then the last one would be Brad Thorne. I had some great competition against him. More complicated with Canada against New Zealand in the World Cup in 2011, but had some great competition, with Clermont and Leinster, kind of the beginning years when they started a real resurgence in Europe, and now to where they are now. And Clermont we were running pretty well as well, being in different finals and semifinals every year. Those three guys would definitely be the three for me.
Some good picks. I mean, let's face it, you don't hang around in the top French league for 17, 18 years or so without being a tough guy.
Nah, you got to be generous, right? My mom always says it's better to give than to receive, so I just keep doing that.
Exactly. So, final thing before we wrap up, what things do you think World Rugby should be bringing in to mitigate the risk of head injuries?
Well, I think there's definitely been a kind of the last 5 years. I get the impression there's been a lot. They've accelerated things, which is great. Because it's complicated now in that when I talk about my story and others, there's a lot of kind of noise that comes with all that. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the game better and make the game safer. There's no like big money grab here. There's no like this is to make the game that I love, that you love, that we all love, safer so that it's better for the long term. And that's the core issue here. It's great that we've now have a longer return to play on the professional level. And that's important. But the biggest thing for me is education, and the education needs to be around the world from the bottom up, because at grassroots level, kids need to understand that they can't do like what the guys on TV do. They need even more time, and coaches need to understand that, and parents, and more importantly, the players, because as as a rugby player, you keep care of your buddies. When you see somebody get injured on the field, whether they're on the opposing team or not, you're like, oh no, we got a ref, we got a problem here, and that's the great thing about rugby. Everybody cares about each other, and there's a mutual level of respect. And I think that really needs to be driven home, and that can only be done through education. So I think the biggest thing they do is continue on with the communication around these things, making sure it's clear and concise, and everybody just keeping care of each other so that the game can continue to grow and be healthy, and more kids play. The more you're proactive with all that stuff, and the more you communicate in a positive way with that, the more parents are going to see this as a viable, game for their children. And, when you do that, then the game will grow and flourish, and you just keep building.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, we've got to get the kids coming through in grassroots, because otherwise, we can't hold on for forever. Definitely.
Sorry, Matt. I had to...
No worries, mate.
Office.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, because let's face it, according to your Instagram, you probably got another monster gym session to get onto.
That's exactly what I'm about to do.
So the other thing I've got to mention, of course, being a film buff as well, is your brother Dan.
Oh yeah, the big shot,
the original Colossal in X-Men.
Yeah.
So who's the biggest star in Canada? You or Dan?
Oh, definitely Dan. He's done a bunch of he's done very well for himself in the movies. Started with some advertising stuff, then moved into a few other roles. Then he got that Colossus role with X-Men, and He's done a few of those vampire movies, those Alone in the Dark, I think it was the Twilight ones.
Okay.
Yeah, the Twilight. So he's done a few Twilight ones. So he's got quite an ardent following through the Twilight kids, and yeah, he's it's funny because a bigger guy like him, it's they normally get kind of pushed into stunts.
Yeah.
He's done well in terms of, he's done a bit of stunts, but he's kept his acting going and kind of focused on that, and he's worked regularly. So as anybody that knows that kind of domain or that kind of business, if you're working regularly, that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
So he's very fortunate to have that, and but he's done well. So like the three of us, my younger brother Luke, he played Espoir rugby in France. He played a little bit of professional stuff. Played at London Irish. He played internationally as well. So the three of us have all been very successful, and mom and dad are pretty happy, I think.
Well, definitely. So you never considered acting?
Acting, Jesus, you seen this face? I got a face for radio, buddy. I don't need to be on the screen.
We'll put this out as a podcast and video so people can decide what they want.
Yeah, you can just blur out my face if you want.
Yeah, or put a warning. Yeah, but I really appreciate your time today. Always great to get your viewpoint on these things as well, both from the playing and player welfare as well. So we'll put a link to your charity in the descriptions of everything as well, so people can follow you, as well as your social links as well. So yeah, people can check up on your crazy gym sessions and bonkers stuff.
Yeah. Well, we talked about after career, right? You can't let your body go downhill, because for me, if I don't go work out, I'm in more pain. So
yeah,
motion is lotion. So just keep moving.
Definitely. And what a saying to end on. So thanks so much for joining us today, and we look forward to speaking again.
Right on. Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks.